Revolution is in our veins. Soon the whole world will know our names. Sharing our knowledge and freedom reign. We here for the people, you know it's our way. Setting foundations is part of the dream. It doesn't matter if you're new to the game. Listen up now, cause we all gon' say, elevate, 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 higher, elevate, 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 higher. We gon' rise up, we all gon' shine. Work through adversity, stay on the grind. Elevate, elevate, this is our time. Elevate, elevate.
Welcome to the Elevate Podcast, everyone. It's so great to have you all on one more time. It's your boy Josh
and Reg,
and we're grateful to be back on with you yet again. We're sorry we're not coming to you on a Tuesday, but we're gonna have to do Thursday instead because it is lit tonight. There's a lot that's happened this week, and we're glad to be able to kind of be in the mix this week and see what's going on. Reg was feeling a little under the weather. Happy he's back, and we are excited and so pumped about all the amazing messages you sent us to make sure willing Reg to feel better. We are here for it. We're super excited. So much has had gone down. First, we're gonna be addressing we talked about last week, the thing that offended some of the listeners here because we dare question both sides of the aisle. But again, Polyev's weird response to that very hostile reporter last week. We got some stuff on that, but as well, what the title says. We're talking about how extremists got into powers of government and influence in this country and what's happened there and what continues to happen, all the way to ArriveCan and all the juicy details coming out of that, and so much more. We're happy to have you. Reg, how you feeling, big dog?
Feeling better. So it was funny because usually I can rally on a lot of things when I'm not feeling well. I had no voice. So I was like, this is really bad for a podcast to not be able to speak. Like to the point where I was mouthing things and I had Jen kind of, going, is it this? Is that? And I'm like, no, it's just over here. And she's like, I can't hear you. I'm just like, I know. So glad to have a voice again.
Dude, we know that Trudeau definitely doesn't want you having a voice, but we're happy that you have it back. So yeah. Super excited for you. It ended up working out, honestly, because Monday was a holiday. Heritage Day here in Nova Scotia, Islander Day in PEI, Family Day in Ontario. I don't know what they call it in BC. Either way, every province in this country had Monday off. They all call it something different because diversity is our strength. And we were excited that we had it off. And I went skiing all day Monday. And Kelsey made sure that we were up right at 6 a.m. to get in the car and drive 2 hours up to Wentworth. Had a grand old time up there. It was great. The skiing was beautiful. Lots of fresh snow. Dashing through the snow. Going on my skis. It was amazing. I loved it. And then I was like, I got to do a podcast tonight, and I'm exhausted. I've been up 6 a.m., and typically what happens is we do the show, and that takes about a couple hours. Then I got to go home and edit it all, bring it all together. Overall, it ends up being a good, solid 6-hour night for me, typically. So I was like, I've been up since 6 a.m. I'm not going to bed till 2 a.m. It's going to be a long day for your boy. I'm not going to lie. When Reg texted me, he's like, 6 p.m., he's like, I don't know if I can do this. I was like, it's all good. I don't think I can do it either. Yeah. So it all worked out.
Yeah, it was funny too because I messaged you and I was like, have you been skiing? Because I was looking outside. I was like, it's so nice. I just want to ski.
Gee.
Because I haven't been in like, I don't know, maybe a year and a half. The last time I went, I was up in Tremblant. It was beautiful. But so it was like perfect weather for skiing. Too. I was like, that boy's skiing. I know he is.
It wouldn't have worked out, but if it makes you feel better, because apparently you think my wife hates you. She wanted to invite you both and Jen and your amazing daughter with us to go skiing. So that was on the docket, but unfortunately all we're sick, so it wouldn't have worked out anyways. Mm-hmm. But it was she did bring it up, and I was like, man, this was a great idea. She brought this up on, I don't know, she brought this up on Saturday, and I was like, I'm not giving them 2 days notice. I'm not doing that to them.
Oh my God.
Not doing that.
See, that's how I know that you weren't born on the East Coast, because East Coast, you'd give like somebody half-hour notice, be like, "You ready? We're going." And that's how we live our life out here,
dude. That's how I live my life in Ontario. After I moved out here, no one did that out here, and everyone was so offended that they had to have plans. Oh, my family's coming up. Screw your family. What the heck's going on out here, man? I hate that, but that's not my experience with the East Coasters, to be honest.
Okay, well, my experience, that's what I grew up doing. That's how I've been doing my whole life.
I'm here for it, dude.
But speaking of things beautifully done on the East Coast, I had an interesting interaction at work again.
Oh, man.
So it's becoming a theme now. Like, what is the stupid thing that Reg can do at work? So we had a really bad snowstorm the other week, and I made it in to the office because my wife works at the hospital, so I had to drive her. And I was like, oh, that's fine. I work close to the hospital. So we get in. I get into the office. There's only like 4 or 5 of us in the entire office. Usually there's like 70 people there. So we're going to have a grand old time. You know, we're all talking, doing our work at the same time. Somebody's playing music. It's great. And nature was calling. So I was like, you know what? The all gender, handy-capable washroom that's like 2 feet away was right there. And I was like, I'm not walking all the way down to the other end of this office to go to the straight white male washroom. I was like, we're not doing that. I'm too lazy today. It doesn't matter. There's only 4 of us here. And then I was like, this is going to be fine. So went and did my business and went to flush the toilet and it wouldn't flush. I was like, oh no. So I tried again and the water starts filling up and then the panic starts to set in because think about this. You've only got 4 people in that office. One person goes to use the all gender washroom and now it doesn't work. They're going to know it was me. They're going to know that I did that. And I was like, I can't let this be the thing that, that everybody like knows. I already walked into the glass. I can't be also the guy who like clogged the all gender washroom.
Dude, you full on colonized that bathroom, bro.
Oh my God. It was bad. And so I'm panic pushing like the thing to flush. And it's just filling up with more and more and more water.
You can figure that one out, eh?
I was like, man, there's got to be a chance that it's going to go down. So as it's starting to fill up to the point where I'm like, oh no, it's gonna spill over the bowl. I'm just like, I just made a decision in that moment, reached in, grabbed the clump of toilet paper, and it all went down. And I was just like, this is the grossest moment of my life. I went over to the sink, scrubbed from my fingertips all the way up to my elbows, and just like lathered myself up in soap, went outside the washroom, grabbed the Purelled my arm, then went back in the washroom, washed myself again, and then went back to my seat and was like, okay, well, we avoided that crisis, but never again am I going to use the all-gender washroom.
Well, that was a lot of information.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone was asking for it, but what a story. Dang, what a way to start that one off.
I know.
Jeez.
It was a crappy day.
Yeah, no kidding. Okay, so let's jump right into it. We said at the top, we got a dense episode to get into, and we're going to peel that Band-Aid off right now. So obviously we talked about last week, saw both sides of it, how we had a reporter who was super hostile to Pierre Poilievre. Pierre Poilievre wasn't answering the question that she was asking him, which was
120 million, 125. I'm trying to remember.
120.
Yeah. That money that was supposed to go in tax relief to the different legacy media corporations, Bell Media being one of them. Bell Media specifically getting 40 million in tax relief. And that was a big thing because they just laid off a bunch of people, citing that they needed an extra 40 million. So
yeah.
It was an interesting situation. So they actually had the reporter there questioning Poilievre on that money that was supposedly put in place from an amendment by a conservative member of his party.
Yeah. And again, Pierre's response to that was dismissive, and it kind of just made it about how this person was dishonest and how they were asking the question, this, that, the other, and then we never got to the bottom of what the answer was, which was weird in itself. So, as promised, we looked into it ourselves, and admittedly, we did it separately, and then we did it together. And we probably put, between the two of us, he easily put in probably close to 5-6 hours looking into this. And
I actually put in more than that. And
did you?
Yeah. And if the listeners know Jennifer L from our previous episodes, I contacted her. I was like, you need to help me here. This is driving me nuts. Where is this amendment that was supposedly be put in place that they're citing, that the Canadian press is specifically citing? And she's like, I don't know. I don't know where that's at. I'm going to call one of my friends in the Conservative Party and see if they know where that's at. And so far, nobody's really been able to find it.
Yeah, and it was interesting. Even yourself, you reached out to the Canadian press specifically, and they pretty much told you, stick it where the sun don't shine. Everything's in the article that you need to know. And then we're just like, well, that's helpful. And so what ended up happening, again, there was a specific piece in that article that said that it was a motion by a Conservative member to amend this piece of legislation of the Online Streaming Act. And that would kind of take away red tape and give back $120 million to legacy media, is what they said. And again, we saw no proof of this. And there's no piece of it on the internet, and nothing in the parliamentary archives that this happened. If you put in that many hours, say you put in 7 or 8 yourself, you said, I know for myself, I put in about 3, and we couldn't find jack. And then we also brought in help. Still couldn't find a thing. You want to add to this?
Yeah. So what I did find is that in that time period, though, what happened is that the Trudeau government said, we're pushing this bill forward. It's going through the Heritage Committee, and you have a time limit. And we have this specific time limit on debates for amendments. And after that, it's going to the House Commons to be voted on, and too bad, so sad. And so the Conservative Party apparently had proposed something like 100 and something amendments to this bill. It was a huge amount of amendments, and they were talking through each one. They ran out of time. And so it could have been one of any of the 100 amendments that were added, because everything just kind of got rolled into it. It got pushed through the Parliament, and then from there pushed into the Senate. So it wasn't well done at all. Right. It was actually done very, very secretively and very weirdly.
Yeah. And obviously not well documented either. So it was just all kinds of different things that were happening, which were very weird. So we, at best, this Canadian press story, and this is just me saying this, at best, we have the Canadian press who's gatekeeping information. At worst, this was made up, which was very concerning for me. Just as we've been following the media. We know that I've always kind of seen the media as they'll kind of take a kernel of truth and stretch it as far as they can to kind of suit a specific narrative. This is the first time where I cannot find a kernel of truth based on anything they said in this article, and that was really concerning for me as just a regular Canadian.
So the kernel of truth that I think that they're working with is that there were all these amendments that were put in. And there was actually a professor from the University of Ottawa who commented specifically on this. His whole study, his whole doctorate is based on technology and communication. And so what he was saying is that there was a bunch of amendments that were actually secret, that they did not release to the public, and that the public should be ashamed that this is a bill that went through Canadian Parliament because of just the secrecy around the information that was within it. And that now we have this multi-layered document that would take hours to actually go through. Funny enough, I actually downloaded that document, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to save myself some time. I have ChatGPT 4. I'm going to throw it into that and get it to analyze the document. It came up with a disclaimer. I thought this was interesting. It said, we've recognized that you're putting in Canadian legislation. We are restricted from analyzing this document. Unfortunately, we cannot analyze this document because of our restriction. I was like, holy crap. Like, what is this government? Like, how do they have that much power?
Yeah, that's wild.
Yeah.
That's wild. Yeah. So that's where that ended up all. And so if you look at whatever the words were in this act, in the article by the Canadian Press, if I'm taking it for face value, what I understood was that they weren't putting an amendment forward to give these companies $120 million. It was an amendment around using the money that's already there, not infusing more money into the situation. So it was essentially just kind of taking away red tape and saving them money on just bureaucracy. It's really what it was coming from. So that's kind of at best, if this thing is true, based on this article, that's where this is all coming from.
Yeah, what I saw was that it looks like what they were offering was a way to cut some of the fees that the other media channels were going to have to pay in order to be competitive. And so that's where that came from, I think. It was a reduction in fees that they were going to actually have to pay to the government. Yeah. So,
and that's kind of what we got out of that. So what I understood, my understanding of why Pierre got really weird around that question is because, well, it seemed to be very nuanced and to be a lot of crap and details around it that this person wasn't honestly trying to ask the question, and thus he wasn't going to entertain or give the time of day. And he did it in his own Pierre Poilievre way.
Yeah. And it was a weird question. And I'm like, How did they come up with the number? And I think that was the thing that I said after doing all this research and looking at it. I said, the question, if I was Pierre Poilievre, I would say, because he was like, oh, you're from the Canadian press, like you're garbage, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh, that was kind of a stupid response, Pierre. This is like feeding into like the super left wing, like propaganda machine, like basically that comment. I would have done what he did in the apple orchard. I would have said, where'd you get that number? Who gave you that number? Is that something you calculated on your own? Like, where did you get that from? Is this something that Bell Media and all the other media companies have put forward to you? If so, where did they get that number? And just like pick apart the so-called evidence that they're providing for this question and just break it down that way. Like, he's done that before. And that was what got him the most attention, was when he was actually methodical in that way. Mm-hmm. And we didn't see that in that interaction. And I'm still kind of like, nah, Pierre, that was not your best moment. So anybody who's kind of like, you know, rooting for him and saying, oh, that was great, he was putting that reporter in his place. I was like, no, actually that wasn't your shining moment.
Yeah, it could have been done better.
Yeah.
So either way, weird situation.
Very
Lots
weird.
of questions around it. And we continue to have questions around it. And Canadian press, as I said, at best, are gatekeeping information and are not telling us really where this all came from.
Well, fun fact for everybody, the Canadian press is a private entity. So that was something I found out. So they're owned by the Toronto Star, I think the Globe and Mail, and I'm trying to remember the third, but there's 3 private entities that own the Canadian press. And the Canadian press then writes these articles that are then sold to newspapers like CBC, CTV, and these news outlets then take these articles and they can zhuzh them up however they want. But for the most part, they just copy paste them. And so that's why you're seeing in media the same thing over and over and over again. And it's nauseating, especially when you see the CBC using them and they're getting public funds to try and do independent journalism. And they're just buying the Canadian press articles. Like, yeah. What a lazy way of doing media.
Straight from the wire, baby. And which was interesting, right? You said private entity being used by our public funds, people who are supposed to be down the line, straight as an arrow, hitting both sides, and they're just kind of being lazy and just picking up whatever is being thrown to them by the Canadian press. Speaking of the Canadian press and other news outlets, we're going to move into the next news outlet here, the Gazette. Steven Guilbeault, man. What a guy. This man set the world aflame last week, and there's a lot to get into on this. We're going to be dredging up old information that started last week and moving into things that kind of happened this week. But this man really fired up some of the conservative premiers in the country by saying we are done investing in new road infrastructure. It's over. And his reason says electric vehicles are not I want to say panacea.
Yep.
Yeah, that's what I thought too. Electric vehicles are not a panacea for climate change, Steven Guilbeault says. Electrification is an important component of the battle. Public and active transit are also key, Environment Minister says. And he goes on to this article and says that electric vehicles are not going to be the silver bullet. And we're just like, wow, it's something we've been all talking about for so long. He's like, you guys are right. It's going to be public transit. That's the silver bullet. That's how we're going to do this. And then he went on to say in that same interview that we are no longer going to be investing in new road infrastructure and we're going to be focusing our efforts on public transit.
Yeah, and so what I find interesting about this is that I do agree that public transit could be the way forward, especially if you look at places like in Europe where they have really good high-speed trains taking you all over the place. If they actually did things like that, you can electrify a train really easily. They're on a track, and you know what I mean? And trains are separate from the rest of traffic, so you're reducing congestion. It's just it's a better way to travel, and I think it's the way forward, honestly. But I'm not seeing any investment in that. I'm just seeing carbon tax upon carbon tax upon carbon tax. We're not building roads. We're going to take everything away, and somehow that's going to push you into a greener future. It's like, no. If you actually want to move people into a greener future, you gradually change things in a way where the available options are plentiful, and that the greener options are more desirable, not that the other options are more painful. And the problem is that they're taking the approach of they're making the other options more painful and not giving any other option. So it's like, what are you supposed to do? What are you supposed to do with that? And all this money that they've been collecting in the name of pushing things forward, where is that money going? I'm not seeing any of it being used for anything. And like I said, he's just talking about not building roads and not doing all this other stuff and then putting out flowery messages about public transit. Where's your direct transfers to public transit? That's out of your jurisdiction. That's something that's at a municipal level. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
It reminds me of a situation that happened in question period back in like 2018. And it's a moment that sticks with me because it was so funny. At the time, the transportation minister of the Liberal Party was talking about how much the Liberal Party had invested in public transport and helping people out when they said they had invested at the time $30 billion in public transportation. Halifax got a new bus, this, that, the other. And that's how he worded it, was that Halifax got a new bus. We invested $30 billion in public transit infrastructure, and it just sounded so bad. So Pierre Poilievre at the time comes across the aisle and says, this man just said they spent $30 billion and Halifax just got a new bus. How much does that work out per bus? And that's kind of what it reminds me of. And we haven't seen any improvements since 2018 into public transport. It's just, again, another flowery message to distract and deflect from what's really going on, of the misuse of funds, which we'll get into later in this episode, and how a carbon tax is really hurting people. And this man's getting wrecked on this left, right, and center. And it again proves the point of how in the world have we allowed political extremists into positions of power when they clearly don't know what they're doing. Their goal is just to kind of push their own goal, which is very tunnel visioned, not considering the solutions that are on the outskirts, which proves he doesn't care. He just has an end goal and thinks this is the only way. And when now he's getting pressure on it, and he's trying to deflect away from it.
Yeah. And I think that probably a lot of the money that they talked about, like the billions of dollars, probably went to public transit options in Ottawa and Toronto, honestly, because you have two subway lines that just put in, like the Yonge and Eglinton line in Toronto. And then the I forget which line it is in Ottawa, but when I was there, the whole place was just tore up and it was years behind schedule and way over budget. But it is a better option, but the problem is just, it's so expensive, and any kind of transit option like that is going to be expensive. But the other thing that I will mention is that it's just in Ontario. You know, where is the rest of the money for the rest of Canada? And that's why you got Alberta screaming right now, is because they're saying, you know, we see Quebec getting 50% of equalization payments. We see Ontario getting all the rest of it in different projects and different battery plants or different deals that are being made. And then what's left for the rest of us? What's left for Alberta? And so when I see Steven Guilbeault go up there and tell basically Danielle Smith to shove it and that they're not funding any more roads, when that province specifically relies on roads and road transport to take things from up north down to Calgary, I can see why they're PO'd, and I can see why she's come out and attacked him personally. Mm-hmm. So
yeah, and again, to be very specific, and because I'm going to do my best not to be an activist and be honest and down the middle on this as best I can. Don't like the man. I think he's the worst, if I'm being honest. But really, at the end of the day, he was very specific in his language. He doesn't want to put any more money into new road infrastructure. He wants to keep putting money into keeping up our current infrastructure. That's what he said. Whether you want to believe that or not, you do you. But what's happened is the Conservatives have kind of run with this and said he's wanted to take out all money out of roads. Not necessarily what he said. You take that for what the truth it could be, but I'm just saying what I've read is that he's doesn't want to fund anything new. He's gonna keep funding current stuff, nothing new. We'll see what that goes, but a lot of the premiers really fired up. Obviously, Danielle Smith came out and spoke against it. Even our own premier here in Nova Scotia, Tim Houston, put out a letter of his own. saying he's not a fan of this either.
Yeah, and it's kind of like what I was saying is that you have a lot of rural areas in these provinces that need proper highway infrastructure that never had them before, and then with population growth, now they actually have the population to justify that kind of infrastructure. And especially areas that need twinned highways that only have like a single lane on each way, and now they're going to get a twinned highway. That's really huge for those communities, and it also has been shown to reduce like traffic incidents, and it's going to be something that's really going to be helpful for them. And to have all those projects then stopped in their tracks without any additional funding, that's challenging, especially when those highways are federal highways that are going to be twinned for those communities. Mm-hmm. So if he's stopping infrastructure money going to those communities who, one, are connecting them to larger hubs, two, providing valuable jobs for the people in those communities to build those roads, like he's slapping rural Canada across the face, basically saying, here's our carbon tax, and also like, screw you.
Yeah, totally. And I don't disagree. I think it's dumb. It's ridiculous. And we are one of the very few countries in the world who are implementing a carbon tax. And then on top of that, have nothing to show for it. Where's the money going? WTF? Where's the funds? Like that's where we're at. And it's frustrating. And we'll keep moving on here because he was pressured on this issue of the carbon tax, and it's supposed to achieve the goal of lowering emissions. And a conservative MP came out and spoke against this very specifically of where's this carbon tax really going, and putting the pressure on Liberal Party.
You won't believe this. Justin Trudeau's radical environment minister, yeah, this guy, accidentally revealed the truth about the carbon tax. And you won't believe what I'm about to tell you. Justin Trudeau has been telling Canadians that his carbon tax is needed for one reason and one reason only: to reduce greenhouse gas emissions.
Pollution pricing is the backbone of our climate strategy. It is foundational because it has proven to work all over the world, not only to drive down carbon emissions, but to raise innovation and energy efficiency and to create jobs in the emerging green economy.
He keeps telling Canadians if you open your wallets and pay his costly carbon tax, emissions will go down. Guess what? I asked the government how many emissions have been directly reduced from the carbon tax. This is a response from Trudeau's very own environment minister. The government does not measure the annual amount of emissions that are directly reduced by federal carbon pricing. You heard that right. The Liberals don't know if their carbon tax works because they don't measure the results. In fact, after 8 years, emissions have gone up under Justin Trudeau's carbon tax. Folks, the carbon tax is a complete scam, and Trudeau's environment minister just proved it. In fact, Canada ranked 62nd out of 67 countries for climate change performance in 2023. That's 4 rankings worse than the previous year. On April 1st, Trudeau is increasing his carbon tax again by 23%. So the next time you see your gas, grocery, or heating bill increasing from the carbon tax, ask yourself what you're paying for. Because the Liberals sure don't.
Damn. It's funny because I'm an evaluator by trade. So what matters gets measured, and what measured matters, right? So I specifically look at healthcare funding and projects that are funded by public dollars in that way. And if we can't justify the cost, like those things, they're a huge flag for the government. And so to see something like this, where the environment minister goes, oh, well, we don't measure the impact of the carbon tax on emissions. It's like, well, then what the heck is it for? Like, what do you mean you don't measure it? Like, nowhere in my experience with the public service, when you're using funds in a way that is supposed to be financially prudent, and it's supposed to be, I'm searching for that word. I'm also still recovering.
Yeah, fiscally responsible.
Yes, thank you. And things that are supposed to be fiscally responsible. You don't not measure the outcomes of the thing that you're enacting and paying for. So this is just a slap in the face again to all Canadians, not just rural Canadians, but all Canadians this time. Like that, I just found ridiculous. Like nowhere do you see that in any other part of government where they don't measure the thing that they're spending money on, or they're collecting money on, or they're reporting on. Like what the heck?
It goes back to my point I made earlier. We have activists and extremists in politics when their only goal is their tunnel vision of just, we're going to make everything green, oil bad, everything gas bad, and we're going to put a carbon price on it, make everyone suffer, to force them to go to electric, force them to go green. And so there's no plan behind our carbon tax. We don't measure the emissions. We don't measure the results of our policy. Say what you want about government. The whole goal is to try and get results. And any time the government puts any policy in place, their role is to try and figure out if there was any impact made by the policy. And they full on said in documents, we're not even looking at the result of this policy. We're just doing it. This is the guy who is in charge of environment. That's troubling.
That's what I feel like this whole government has been, though. It's just we're doing it without any consideration for the downstream effects or the impacts. And so, but like I said, like in provincial government, at least in the Nova Scotian provincial government that I know intimately, they are looking at all the dollars that are spent. They're looking at the outcomes from policy, and they are nixing bad policy, and then they're asking what happened with those dollars. Like there's always accountability for these kind of things, because if not, that's money that's wasted. So to me, it's just so irresponsible that they don't measure that. And then to have the audacity to stand in front of the Canadian public and go, look at us in Canada. We're doing such a good job on our climate initiatives. We've collected so much carbon tax. We're not going to tell you how much we collected, though. That's secret. We're not telling you that.
But we're giving it all back to you.
But we're giving it back to you, you know? Like, where does this make sense? Because this has been the messaging. It's that we're collecting carbon tax, but we're giving it back to you, and you're getting more. What? Like, no, just stop collecting it in the first place. Leave me with my money, and I'll make my decisions. Thank you.
Absolutely. And I'm going to digress a little bit here, but I'm thinking about one of the recent TikToks we put out about you and Jen going off about tax credits, going off about money being thrown around by liberals, and how if Poilievre were to come in, it would just be about kind of utilizing what is currently being paid and getting tax deductions based on whatever you spend, whether your leisure for your kids, this, that, the other. So many liberals commented on that video, calling you selfish, calling Jen selfish. So I remember specifically as one listener, or I wouldn't say, no, she's not a listener. She catches up on our TikToks, very far left though, said that it's always me, 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 me. Can't you care about other people too? And what this person failed to see, that the policy we're talking about with what Poilievre would do with just putting a tax credit to everybody is that it would help everybody. Currently, what's being offered is by the Liberal government is, I think, maybe helping out at best 10% of the population, whereas what could be brought to, what would be implemented by Conservatives would help a lot more than that. I don't know percentages right now, but I do know that it would be a much bigger portion of the middle class, which would help more people than just a small portion, and I think that would be better.
Yeah, well, it would literally help everyone. It would help 100% of people. If you think about it, the carbon tax is on the fuel that goes into the tractor. It's on the fuel that goes into the processing plant that processes your food. It's on the trucks that are then trucking your food to your grocery store. It's then on the grocery store's power to run the lights and to run the heat and everything else to do with that. It's on the gas that you use to get to the grocery store to pick up your food. Like, we're just paying tax upon tax upon tax upon tax. And then what's interesting is that when you look at fuel charges, like if you buy home heating oil or you buy natural gas and you don't live in Atlantic Canada, you'll see that you have your fuel-based charge, then you'll have your carbon tax, and then you'll have your HST on top of all that. So you're being taxed on your tax. They're double dipping. Mm-hmm. Like, don't tell me it's about me. It's everyone. Everyone is suffering from this. You remove it, everyone does better.
Absolutely. And it's more so just a cop-out from people who aren't informed of what's happening and how things actually operate. I'm sure this person's very well-meaning and really does care about people. They just don't understand how policy actually works and how it could help more people than it is currently. And just printing more money and throwing it out to people is not the way. How about use the money that people are already making and just giving them credits on top of that versus just adding more money to them that then you will then tax them on later, and all this garbage and this whole mindset with the carbon tax that, you're getting more of it back than you're paying. Well, we all know that's BS. We've seen that for the past year and a half. I gave you my propane bill. Nova Scotia gave me a rebate on my propane bill of like $100. My carbon tax was $100. So does offset. It didn't matter. And so this is where we're going. And this is why people are frustrated and why we need to keep putting the heat on stuff like this and really making it clear that, this thing that's really causing a lot of issues and making a lot of people suffer, you had no intention of getting any type of result from putting this tax on people other than just forcing people to live a certain way and just figure it out and flip the switch and move to a green future. And this is why I say when it comes to activists and power, I go back to, I think it was around 2019, 2020, AOC proposes the Green New Deal in the States. And everybody on the right laughed in her face. Well, right now, we're seeing the Green New Deal in Canada. Are you laughing now with how much tax you're paying? You have to take these people seriously and make sure you speak out so that this stuff doesn't happen, because these people will get into power. You got to pay attention, and they will screw you 6 ways a Sunday if you don't pay attention.
And the worst part is, like, I feel like the thing is you don't see people on the right going, I want a super polluted future where we're all barely breathing. Like, that's not the idea. Everybody wants the same future. We all want to get to a place where you're healthy, that things are moving well, that we're using our resources sustainably and renewably. It's just, it can't happen overnight. And I think that's the reality of it. And that it's funny because you see a lot of blue collar folks that are saying this. And then you see a lot of white collar folks in my industry. They're going, I don't understand why they're upset. It's because the blue collar folks are the people doing the work. They know how the machines run. They know how things on the ground are moving. They know the behind the scenes, Wizard of Oz type work that happens to make society function because they're doing it. And the white collar folks are not doing that kind of work. So when they put out a policy that doesn't actually reflect what is possible, of course you're going to get blue collar folks upset because they know how the system works best because they're working it. And so I find it interesting when you see this kind of divide happening. And honestly, it really is. We all want the same future. We just need to get there in a way that's not overnight because we can't do it overnight. And when you try and do that, it just makes it painful, like what we're seeing right now. And it's not actually even productive, as we saw in Guilbeault's memo. It's not having the effect that they want.
Absolutely. And the government House leader had a conversation with CTV the other day about the carbon tax specifically. And it was really interesting to see someone on CTV grill a member of the Liberal Party and how uncomfortable he got and how annoyed she got. You don't want to, if you don't understand what I'm saying, check it right here.
A group of chiefs have taken your government to court asking for an exemption from the price on carbon. Small business owners, farmers who ask for a bill that your government then voted against and had the Senate gut. I mean, these are not inherently conservatives. NDP leader Rachel Notley in Alberta is no longer convinced of the effectiveness of a consumer carbon tax. Wab Kinew, the NDP premier of Manitoba, also no longer convinced of the same. The U.S., nobody's accusing them of not having a climate plan. They do not believe, the ambassador of the United States has told me explicitly, that a consumer price on a consumer carbon tax is necessary to effectively mitigate the impact of climate change.
Well, that's because nothing gets through the U.S. Congress, in fairness.
They don't believe that a consumer carbon tax is necessary. Are they all wrong?
Well, and you haven't pointed to all the jurisdictions, whether they be in Europe or elsewhere, who have implemented a price on carbon, who have made that in the heart of their plans to fight greenhouse gases and combat climate change. So, there are differences and variances from country to country and place to place, but there's no question that in Canada we ran on and have put at the heart of our greenhouse gas reduction strategy a price on carbon. And we've chosen to give that money back to Canadians, 8 out of 10 families better off with respect to these rebates.
So she made a mistake. She brought the United States into it. You can never bring the United States into any conversation with a left-leaning individual.
Okay, why?
Because as soon as you do that, they go, la, 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 America, la, 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 freedom, eagles, guns. Like they can't. So you can't. She should have stopped at Wab Kinew, Rachel Notley, kept it within the jurisdiction of, here are these prominent left leaders saying that they don't buy it, that they don't think this is right. She could have brought up the Steven Guilbeault memo and said, they're not measuring it. These people are saying it's not effective. We're also seeing from, I don't know if it was Environment Canada or what department of the federal government that actually put out how many emissions actually went up over the year. She could have brought all that forward and just kept it within the jurisdiction of Canada with a focus on these left leaders who are now saying that it's not effective. As soon as she brought America into it, he was like, yes, excellent. And you saw her face. She was just like, because I think she probably on some level knew it. She was like, damn it. Because he was like, well, nothing gets through America in Congress. So like, that was the problem. Mm-hmm. Don't bring America into the conversation. Keep it to those left leaders who are then you're making your champion for your argument.
Interesting. I see what you're saying. And obviously he did his thing there with it. I just thought it was interesting because you have a Democrat-led country right now. And I'm assuming that's why she brought it up. Joe Biden is in control, and doing his thing. And they don't even have a price on pollution. They haven't even so much as proposed a price on pollution. These are the crazy left-wing Democrats down the States. And then you bring in Wab Kinew. Awesome. The one that was a huge indictment is Rachel Notley. She's been recalling a little bit on a few different takes on things, which we'll talk about the other things she's been recanting on lately. That was a big one too. I love how most people are realizing, oh man, this carbon tax is crushing our constituents. It's going to crush my job. And I'm screwed. And so it was interesting that she did bring those things up. I think those were very effective. He wasn't ready. I mean, I don't know I wouldn't say he wasn't ready, but he was not comfortable. And it was interesting to see her reaction to his response.
Yeah. So. Like I said, I know that as soon as you bring America, even though they're led by the Democrats, as soon as you bring America into the conversation, like suddenly they don't hear you. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that they're our largest trade partner to the South and that they're led by a Democrat leader. It does not matter. People will just shut down completely. So if you're having these conversations with others about climate change and about carbon tax and whatever issue it is, find the left leaders that agree with you and use that in your conversation, because how do you refute that? It's like, here are the people that are supposedly on your team actively saying something that is not congruent with the message that you're hearing. And that's where you create a little bit of cognitive dissonance where people go, what? And then they struggle with that. Mm-hmm. But yeah, as soon as you throw America, people just, they stop.
I mean, yeah, especially when you have a party that's further left than yours saying, stop this. That's tough. That's a tough one to get out from under. And they're honestly being crushed in every point in Parliament, in their jobs right now. I would hate, and Jennifer referred to this last week, but I would hate to be a Liberal MP right now.
Oh, God, yeah.
You're getting wrecked. You're getting absolutely just, because what do? You step out of party lines and you get turfed by Trudeau, or you stay within party lines and you get wrecked by your constituents and everyone hates you. They're going to lose the situation over there.
Yeah. The worst part is that I think that constituents aren't dumb. Like, I think that they would probably stick by their politicians.
Come on. What?
If
You're going to give them the benefit of the... No.
if they defected from their party.
Okay, there we go.
I was like, what are you talking about?
I was about to go, wow,
Like,
bro.
If they left their party lines and said, actually, we're sitting with the Conservatives on this one, because the Conservatives would love to have them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that the public would respect them more. And I think that they could probably go to sleep at night knowing that they stick to their integrity. So I think that it's a bad look for them, honestly. And they need to do some deep soul searching.
Yeah, I would agree with that too. The minute you say, screw you, I'm going to do what's best for my party, yeah, you would keep the following into the next election. The problem is on that is, do you switch parties? Do you go independent? Or do you remain a Liberal and hope to get reelected? That's a tough one.
Yeah, it's hard because, like, going independent, we've seen it in Nova Scotia specifically, like Bill Casey. He said, nope, I don't agree with this. This is hurting my constituents, and left his party because he felt that it was wrong. And so the respect that man has by the people that he led while he was in power, like, they continued to support him as an independent. So the problem is, though, then he was effectively cut out of any kind of power, because as an independent, you have very little impact on anything. And so it's like being neutered, right? And in a political sense, which is unfortunate, but at least that man can go back to his community and say, hey, I did right by you. Right. And like, at the end of the day, that's what's on your tombstone, right? Yeah. So, but that being said, there's nothing against people crossing the aisle. People do it all the time. So why not?
Yeah. I mean, I think what Jennifer said last week was, a lot of these Liberal MPs, though, would hate to lose to a Pierre Poilievre conservative. I think as much they would hate to conform to a Pierre Poilievre conservative party.
That's true. And that is just pride. That's all that is.
True.
So, yeah,
we'll keep it moving here. Just make this real quick. This was, a couple weeks ago at this point. Dude, this NDP MP saying that he introduced a bill that would prescribe jail terms for speaking well of fossil fuels. What was this man thinking? And this is the issue I was talking about, activists in places of power and being in their own echo chambers. He really thought this was a good idea. He really thought, you know what, fossil fuels are the new tobacco industry. He was more extreme on fossil fuel people and the fossil fuel industry than he was than people have been with the tobacco industry. More extreme. That was bonkers to me.
Yeah.
And I understand Rachel Notley of Alberta's NDP was like, yeah, we don't agree with this. And a lot of the other NDP leaders of other provincial parties were just like, yeah, we don't, actually, I don't know who elected this guy. I didn't know he was in our party. Who is this man? It was wild what came out of this. It was really brutal.
I love how the National Post did this poor guy too. He's like coming out of the shadows of the darkness, like a Sith Lord or something.
Yeah. Gee.
But what's funny is that when you look at the legislation that they were going to put forward, they actually talk about incentive programs and marketing and everything around fossil fuels too. So that means all your PC points that you collect at the pumps, or any kind of fuel incentive program, like money back to spend at Sobeys if you buy from the Sobeys fast fuel stations, all that would be illegal. So again, you'd be just hurting people who need that fuel to then get to their jobs and get home, get groceries, get people to sports, whatever, live their lives. And then taking the one thing away that is like a little bit of a relief when you can use some of those points that you earn on your fuel for groceries. You're taking that all away. Like, dude, read the room.
Well, here's the thing, man. The issue is pumping gas is the same thing as taking a life. You are murdering people anytime that you fill your gas tank. And he wanted to make sure that everyone knew that. So, yeah, screw you for wanting to fill your gas tank, man.
Do you know what the worst part is? So we go into a huge rabbit hole, and I won't take us too far down that rabbit hole, but like emissions out of the back of your tailpipe are hazardous to human health. There's no way around that. We know that in dense cities where people are driving a lot, like the air pollution, it takes years off of people's lives. I get that. The problem is what also takes years off of people's lives is heart disease caused by stress because of the strain of financial problems. We also see cancer rates go up when economic times are hard. We also see problems in people's health when they can't afford nutritious food because they're spending so much money on carbon tax. Like you're fighting one problem and creating another. Like you can't go about it that way.
No. And that's a common sense plan, sir. But it's just more so reason why, Josh, why are you spending 52 minutes going down the different kind of branches of what's happening with this carbon tax here in the past week? It's more so to continue to highlight what is being pushed in Parliament, what is being talked about, what our MPs that have been elected are saying, and to really continue to push back on these people. To be like, no one thought this was a good idea. Why are we paying you to even bring this up as an option? Wait, do you think you are bigger than your constituency? Do you think that you're better than us? Some of these people do. Some people who are in politics really think that being elected is royalty, not being a public servant. And it's time to remind some of these people that what the role they took and the oath that they've taken going into office.
Well, Mr. Speaker, let me be clear. I only take my limo when it's for the Canadian public.
True. I wish I had a limo. That'd be lit.
I've never been in a limo.
No,
No, I've always wanted to go in a limo, but I think like if it's kind of one of those things I'm like, it's an expense that like I can't justify. Like, one day, people, send me in a limo somewhere. I don't care where, but
even if it's around the block.
Even if it's around the block, I just want to go in a limo once.
I want to feel what Chrisia Freeland feels consistently.
Make me feel like Chrisia.
Make that a hashtag. So this ArriveCan stuff's really picking up steam in a good way.
Yeah, on the topic of limos, these guys.
Gosh. So apparently 1,700 emails containing important information on Trudeau's $60 million ArriveCan contracting have mysteriously disappeared as they've been doing investigations into what's going on with ArriveCan. You know, last year when the Liberals had, it was over the summertime. Oh, yeah, no, it was last year. Sorry. Yep. Over a year ago. The Liberals had Hillary Clinton come and speak at their convention. She must have slipped Justin some pointers like, all right, this is how you get rid of real emails. This is how you do it the real way. Now 1,700 emails from ArriveCan and just gone. Poof. Don't know where they're at. And the Conservative Party is putting mad pressure on the Liberals right now. It's getting interesting. And then more and more is coming out. The Auditor General has come out. And what she said was, I would say, nothing short of an absolute indictment on what the heck has been going on here with our funds.
I have to say that I am deeply concerned by what this audit didn't find. We didn't find records to accurately show how much was spent on what, who did the work, or how and why contracting decisions were made. And that paper trail should have existed. This audit shows a glaring disregard for basic management and contracting practices throughout ArriveCan's development and implementation.
We're glad.
It's because it did exist. They just Enroned it and totally burnt everything and deleted everything and purged their systems. Like, I'm just picturing people in Parliament just like pulling the hard drives and just beating them with a hammer. Like, they're not going to find it.
You think that's what happened, eh?
Oh yeah, they were throwing hard drives in microwaves and like, whoops, yeah. You know, I wouldn't be surprised if like a government building just mysteriously burnt down. Like, it's just, yeah.
It's crazy what's happening with this. And I think it's really important, as you said, to keep putting the heat on this, because we cannot let them get away with whatever happened with this. The company in question, who is called GC Strategies, who was a big portion of whatever happened with the ArriveCan. Apparently they were the people that developed it. 4 guys in some cottage in Muskoka somewhere. Received close to $96 million in contract work from this government over the last 8 years.
I thought it was closer to 250 million. I thought that was
that was a misprint by La Presse.
Okay.
It was 250 million dispersed amongst a bunch of different contractors. This specific company received 140 contracts that equal $96 million. They did a reprint on that, or retracted that.
Mm-hmm.
So, yikes! Who are these guys? Who are them? What are they? What's their connection to the Liberal Party? What's their connection to Trudeau? What's their connection to any type of MP? How did you get 140 contracts equaling that amount of money for a company that's 4 people? And now we have a standing committee who are looking into it, and it got interesting today. I'm gonna keep you up to date with what's happening. So today, Pierre Poilievre does a big speech at a local pharmacy, talks about a bunch of different things, and says that the Conservatives have summoned the people who run this company to come and talk to committee and be questioned on what they've done with the money, how they got the money, what they did with it, this, that, the other. They summoned them twice. Didn't show up. They said, "No, we're good. We're not going." So starting yesterday, so by yesterday I mean Tuesday of earlier this week, the Conservatives put a motion forward to have these guys, the sergeant at arms, go get them and arrest them to bring them into Parliament, which hasn't happened since 1913 in this country. What the heck? And so the Conservatives are trying to put this motion forward in committee, and the Liberals have been filibustering it for the past 3 days.
Mm-hmm.
There was one MP that talked for 35 minutes straight, trying to waste time. Wild what's happening. They're like, "Oh yeah, we know, we want to get to transparency, this, and I'm going to talk about transparency for the next 35 minutes and keep talking. And what happens is committee goes from 1 o'clock to 4 o'clock Eastern. And if they get to 4 o'clock, they have to end committee, they move on, and they have to wait till the next day to be able to bring this motion forward again. There's no, we're going to go late and we're going to do this vote. There's none of that happening. It starts at 1, ends at 4. And the Liberals know the game. They've been filibustering the whole time. Hopefully this motion gets voted on by the end of this week. But right now, it's rough.
Yeah, if I was GC Strategies, I'd be getting on a plane. I'd be heading somewhere south. And being like, nope, we got our money from Canada, from the taxpayers. We're gone. And it's interesting because like that's one of the biggest things that the Liberals call the Conservatives on, because the Conservatives do it. They'll filibuster things, mostly because they don't have the power right now, and that's the only play that they've got. But yeah, it's the hypocrisy that like, like they do this and they delay due process and blah, 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 blah. Conservatives bad. And then they do the same thing. They do the exact same thing. Or they'll actually dismiss things. They'll dismiss guests. I know when they were bringing, I think it was the RCMP into question, they actually voted on a motion to have the RCMP like dismissed from the meeting. and the Bloc Québécois, the NDP, and the Liberals all voted to have that meeting adjourned. And it was like, are you serious? So I'm kind of not surprised that this is happening with ArriveCan, honestly. It's not the biggest scandal they've been embroiled in that is just, I don't know, it's SNC-Lavalin, it's We Charity, it's now ArriveCan. how many more of these we're going to see? Like, how many are going to come out of the woodwork once Trudeau's out of office too? And do we have any ability to pull that man back and say, actually, no, we're going to put you on trial and hold you accountable for the ways that you've misused Canadian funds?
Yeah.
Because if you were a private company, like, you would be in hot water.
Yeah.
And you could be charged and sued. Mm-hmm. I think that you should be able to apply that to the government too.
Which could happen in GC Strategies here.
Yeah.
Like, they're going to probably eventually they get their hands on them, they're going to get wrecked harder than Trudeau ever will.
Oh, yeah.
Which is so brutal that that's the way things work in this country. And I do agree. It's never happened, at least from my understanding. I could be wrong, but it needs to happen. As soon as Trudeau's out of office, I know likelihood of it happening, very slim, but I want to see it happen. That we go after every Liberal MP, anyone who is directly associated with Trudeau and Trudeau himself, we take them to court and find out everything that's ever been done, all the misuse of funds, everything. It's got to be brought to light. The only reason why it won't happen is because those in the Conservative Party who are part of kind of the establishment, like, oh, they could do this to us, and we can't let that happen. So they're going to let them off scot-free.
Yep.
And that's what ticks me off. That's what annoys me as a Canadian citizen. And why no one in politics, until they show me different, is going to stand up and do the right thing. Right now, they're showing us at different points they will do something right. But until that happens, and they do something where it could come back on them later, but they still do it anyways, that's when they'll get my full absolute respect. But right now, I'm still cautiously optimistic around politicians in this country.
Yeah. We'll go for a limo ride with them.
Talk to Mr. Perkins over here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Gee. So that's what's happening right now in committee. And those who want to go a little bit deeper and want to know more of what's happened with committee, go to Northern Perspective. Great friends of ours. I shouldn't say that. We're not friends. I don't know them at all. But they do a great job, and they did a great 35-minute breakdown of this whole situation. So if you want to learn more what's going on, go over to them. They're fantastic. And we're going to keep this show going. Freedom Convoy anniversary. Happened last week. People are fired up about this. People are being reminded of what happened back in 2021. Yeah, 2 years. 2021. There's those who are like, wow, God bless Canada. This was great. People stood up for our rights. We got things ended. We got rid of these crazy mandates that were in place, this, that, the other. And there's others on the left who are just like, these stinking Nazis. Why are we celebrating them? Why we need to be reminded of how awful this was. There was Nazis on Parliament Hill. People who wanted to bring back slavery were on Parliament Hill. All the different things that came out during this. There was a lot of, it was during that time, it was really loud.
Yeah.
A lot of conversations. And all those conversations came back up during this anniversary, I find.
Yeah, there was one I actually saw. They brought up the fact that there was, some First Nations people that were marching, drumming, and in support of the convoy. And people were at the time going, they're not real First Nations. Like, they don't embody. I was like, oh my God. Like, how do you get away with this kind of rhetoric? Like, calling First Nations people not First Nations just because they don't agree with, what you deem they should know and what they should stand for. Like, it was, like I said before, pretzeling by the left. It just was wild. And so seeing all these comments coming back up and seeing all the videos coming back up during that anniversary, I was like, oh my goodness, I can't wait to dive into the comment section of these videos because it's going to be a gold mine.
Dude, absolutely. Well, there's one tweet we got from a leftist here. It says, rest in peace, the Freedom Convoy. Oh, man. It was good for a while it lasted. Unfortunately, the scam came to an end and people went on with their lives. Even Pierre Poilievre couldn't take a minute from his fundraising to send well wishes. Womp womp. And more of these kind of kept coming up of just, these people are morons. It's over. And it comes down to the fact that people are so immediate in their viewpoint and how they see things, where I'm like, whether you see it or not, February 2021 was a turning point in this country, whether you want to admit it or not. it was interesting. It didn't all happen at once, but slowly but surely, mandates got dropped immediately after this all happened. And because I think a lot of provincial governments were like, you know what, we're done going with the federal government on this. I don't want to deal with this in our province, so we're getting rid of all these mandates. And I think it should be remembered that this happened. The craziest protest in our country's history, where people's funds got frozen over it.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And it's funny because right now what's happening in Germany, in France, in multiple different countries across Europe, where they actually have farmers coming out with their trucks, with their tractors, with their combines, blocking parliaments and roads and highways and different ways for people to get around, dropping manure in front of government buildings, basically protesting the fact that they are putting restrictions on fuel that they need in order to do their operations, in order to produce food for the countries that they live in. And they're having basically a trucker convoy of their own over there. And we're hearing nothing about it in Canadian media, because I think what would happen is it would stir up more conversations about this, because there's a lot of people in the left in Europe who are completely behind their farmers. And so it would be such a narrative flip if you looked at left-leaning Europeans who are in support of these farmers, who are, you know, basically protesting their governments and being supported by the public to do so. And then look at Canada and say, why didn't we support our workers here when they were protesting? Why did we believe the narratives that were being fed to us by the mainstream media that were paid for by our government? Why didn't our government come out and meet these individuals? Why did they go vacation in Tofino instead? You know, it'd bring up too many uncomfortable questions, so we're not hearing about it. The only way you hear about it now is through TikTok.
Yep.
Which is sad.
Yeah. It's been crazy over there. And the one thing, kind of going back to the convoy stuff too, is I remember Andrew Scholl's comedian came up to Toronto. I think it was probably 6 to 8 months after all that happened. And he did a whole bit just ripping Trudeau over it. He's like, this man got a cold apparently as soon as the trucker showed up, you know, and seeing an American comedian come up and just totally lambaste the prime minister. And this was in Toronto, and everyone in the crowd was just like laughing and cheering. And because we all agree, whether you want to quietly agree or you want to loudly agree, many Canadians saw what happened and they were scratching their heads of like, what just happened? I know I can't talk about it. I might offend some of my friends. I might lose my friends. I'm not going to say much, but something weird happened here. And I don't think I'll ever be allowed to ask questions about it. And that's why 2 years later, we still will talk about the anniversaries and stuff like that, because I think it's important to remember what happened and to not allow the government to sweep this one under the rug.
Yeah, I'm still coining my term. I think that a lot of people are quietly conservative, and this is one of those issues that bring it up, especially because of just the overreach by our government, which we talked about before, that it was not constitutional. The Supreme Court said it wasn't. And it's funny because now you get these extreme left, not your bulk majority of left. I'll give them credit for that, but extreme left, they're just like, something stinks in the Federal Court of Canada. Yeah. What?
Oh man, yeah, it's always interesting to see what comes up on the internet these days. And I think kind of going into, I think this is something that's important. It's happening outside of our borders, but I think it's important to talk about, is Trump being sued for $355 million in the state of New York right now. The reason why I'm saying it, because the extreme things that, like, America's funny like this. Their extreme left and their extreme right, I find they're extreme in whatever they do, I find. But I always find that some of our more progressive provinces like a BC or Ontario aren't far from a California or New York. They're not far behind what they're doing. And the fact that Trump is getting sued for $355 million for literally doing nothing. I was stunned. Like, I thought they would have had something. Maybe they had something that they try to really stretch out, make worth. But he literally told the bank, "Hey, my property's worth $400 million, And the bank's like, I think it's closer to 325, 300 maybe. And Trump's like, oh, okay, whatever. All right, give me 50% of whatever that value is. I'm going to go build something else. The judge was like, yeah, that's fraud. And now it's uno. That's crazy. The fact they were just able to do that. And then on top of that, he has to pay interest on top of that $355 million, which makes it down to up to $450. That's scary, man. I don't like seeing this stuff. There is no real rhyme or reason to any of this. It's just, we hate Trump. We're going to make sure he can't run for office ever again. And we're going to take care of him. He just did what all investors do. Even small investors, those who are trying to buy a new rental property, leverage their current property to go buy another one. And they leverage and put up as collateral this first property. And there's like, yeah, I think my property's worth $500,000. Bank's like, nah, I think it's worth $400,000. Okay, cool. Give me 80% of what that $400,000 is. Like, that's how it's all working. And the fact that this has happened, and there's people who are not willing to do the work to realize, because Trump's name's attached to it, they don't want to do the work of what's happening there. And that's why I think it's really concerning, because this stuff slowly continues to drift up to Canada, and we will start seeing more of that type of crap happen here. If you are a person that takes too much of a stink in politics, they'll find a way to screw you 6 ways a Sunday. And I think this is important stuff to see, recognize, call out, so it doesn't happen here.
What I think is interesting too is the fact that they're really pulling out all the stops. And like, I was listening to his lawyer talk, and she was so frustrated. She was like, this was a clown court. This was garbage. She's like, we couldn't even make any arguments. They just wouldn't let us. And so she was just losing it. And she, because the media was like, she's like, no, I'm telling you exactly how it is. She's like, this is how frustrated I am. And that poor lady, like you saw her, she was just like, my law degree is garbage. She's like, it's toilet paper. Like, I can't believe that I could practice law in this. And I'm like, that's fair to be that frustrated with something like this, because they really have tried everything possible to keep that man from being able to run again, which is very interesting, because whether you like him, like you said, or you don't like him, the fact that they're trying so many different ways, like through, I forget what exactly happened in Colorado with him.
Yeah, it was just because he had a looming sentence over him over the insurrection that they just took him off the ballot.
Right. So these kind of things, right? It's just anything possible to keep him from running.
And this is the weird thing about it for me is, this is something me and Kelsey will go back and forth on, is, Trump, I'm not saying Trump's a good guy. Like, anyone involved at that high level of business, that high level of politics, like, you're just not a good person. Like, There's no way you can be a good person. I'm just being honest. But what I find interesting is that if there really was something terrible on this guy, it would have been brought up by now. If he even had a shred of what Joe Biden's done, or any other big name politician in the States has done, we would know about it by now. And he would definitely be taken off a ballot in some way, shape, or form. But the fact they're just making up fraud claims now, I'm like, is he really that squeaky clean? Like, you can't find anything else? You got to go to this?
Was he not on Epstein's list?
Yeah. I'm like, it's interesting. I'm like, there has to be something else. But I'm like, gee, but these guys hate him that much. You know they would have to pull it, but they haven't. So I'm like, or maybe they just don't think it's going to play well with the American public. Maybe that's it. I don't know. It's just weird to me that they can't find nothing better than just fabricating evidence against him now.
What's interesting though is this is how you create martyrs though, which is interesting because like you said, I don't like him. I don't like Trump. But I can also recognize that, one, they didn't go to war when he was in the president's seat, and two, they really are like we said, pulling at all the stops to try and keep that man from running. So what is it that he represents to the political establishment as it is that they cannot have him in that power seat anymore? Like, what is it that he represents? And I think it's the symbol of disruption that they do not like. Because he would tell the politicians straight to the face, I think you're dumb. I think you're stupid. And they hated that. That kind of decorum just didn't fly with the traditional political establishment. And the people loved it. Not saying that I'm like out there for name calling, but it was kind of funny. But it's the disruption that they can't stomach. And so I think that what they're trying to do is they're trying to stamp that out as much as possible. And what concerns me is, like you said, what does that look like in a Canadian context? What kind of stops are they going to pull? What kind of bank accounts are they going to freeze? What kind of scare tactics or smear campaigns or turning around the media against someone in order to try and stop a disruptor?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It is interesting. I don't know what will happen. Again, what are we, 9 months? 9 months away from an election in the States? Closer to 8 months now? It's only going to keep getting crazier of whatever they're going to try and do with this situation and keep this guy off the ballot. But you said it yourself. He represents a disruption, and the people know he represents a disruption because the people finally feel like whatever you feel like about Trump, people feel like at least some degree their voice is being spoken through this guy. And no one else is really offering that right now. And the establishment knows that, and they don't want to listen to people anymore. They just want to do what the machine does. And I think about something Vivek Ramaswamy put out, and it's something that's always stuck with me, and I really want to keep that at the forefront. Is for so long, what he would call a tyranny of the majority has taken place throughout the country's history. It's whatever the majority wanted is what happened. But now we've shifted so far to the other side of a tyranny of the minority that whatever they say gets done. It's going to happen no matter what. And it's more so we got to have the balance of like, there's no tyranny of anything. We just really need to do what's best for everybody. And right now we got to end the tyranny, period. And it seems like those who are in political power want to use whatever divisive devices they can to kind of keep people at each other's throats so they can maintain that power. And so they'll use the tyranny of the minority or the tyranny of the majority, whatever comes easiest to them, they'll use that and make sure that happens.
Tyranny is bad. Josh Udall, 2024. But yeah, no, totally agree. And it's funny because like, I think about Pierre Poilievre in our Canadian context, just like he represents disruption. And I don't love him particularly. I don't love the idea that he hasn't had any other jobs because the Liberals love bringing that up. I don't love that. I don't feel like he's totally honest in a lot of his things because he's a politician, right? What I can't stomach though is any more Trudeau. I can't stomach his, bestie with testes there, Mr. Jagmeet Singh, right? So it's like, what am I left with? I'm left with Pierre because at least he's saying a few things that I agree with. And if I can get a few of his policies that he's put forward, at least we're a little bit better off than what we're at. And that's kind of the state we're at in politics right now. And unfortunately, it's like you kind of have to take the best of the worst.
Totally. Absolutely. And I don't disagree. And we'll finish off with this one last thing here. Senate bill that's been brought up. We talked about it at Christmas time, actually. Got a lot of people fired up. Was this idea of monitoring and restricting adult content online so that children can't see it. And you're laughing already. It's a CBC article. It says, no more Pornhub. That will depend on what happens with the Senate bill. And the whole idea with this bill is essentially just making it really hard, a little bit harder for minors to access adult content online. Personally, I don't mind. I think it's a great idea. Liberals voted against it because they claim to have their own solution up their sleeve. Yet we have not heard anything else about it. Didn't hear anything about it before this bill came out. Haven't heard anything about it from them since this bill came up. So I don't know what plan they have. But it's interesting kind of where this goes because we talked about it over text. I'm not huge. I think censorship's important to a degree. Not the biggest fan of it. But when it comes to this stuff, my emotions take over. And I'm like, yeah, censor all of it. I'm here for it. This stuff is so bad for you. It kills our culture. It kills people. It kills relationships. Kills families. I'm okay with it not being accessible. Very okay with it. But there's a balance. You know, that's what my emotions say. My brain is fight my emotions on that one, but you're laughing already. So tell me what's up.
I've got that song in my head. It's like, my mind is telling me no,
True.
but my body is telling me yes. And like, that's the reality of it, right? Is that people we're mammals. Mm-hmm. And so the thing that I thought was interesting was that Pornhub actually did scrub millions of videos out of their archives that could not be verified to a person, that were inappropriate or featured a minor or whatever. So they actually went through and scrubbed all those videos out, and they're actively doing that. The thing that I think is concerning is that you're not going to tell people to not watch porn. Like it's not going to happen. If you make it such that a company who has actually gone through and is trying to put the proper measures in place to remove harmful content and just leave general porn alone, if you take them out of the market, what are you left with? You're left with the companies that are not playing by the government rules, that have even more explicit, more harmful videos that are uploaded of people without their consent. Like, you know what I mean? You're getting into even more dangerous territory. So I think it's like, you stick with the devil that you know. Otherwise, you're going to get the devil that you don't know that might be 10 times worse. Mm. And in this case, I think that, I think that Pornhub is probably not the one you want to attack with this.
Interesting.
So,
parts of it were talking about, again, having every user verified before using the platform.
Yeah.
Which was like wild, like facial recognition level. That you're above 18. Like, that's the stuff that's being proposed in this bill. And I'm like, that's crazy.
that's creepy.
I'm like, okay, say it starts here. You see, we've talked about this before. It always starts with something that most people can get on board with. Then, all right, it starts with this, but then it's like, do I now have facial recognition just to access the internet, period? Does it get to that point? That's tough. That's weird. Don't like that. So again, it's one of those like very slippery slopes. It always starts with something that's very, in my words, I would call heinous, of something for me, personal, I would be totally on board with. But then there's like, well, we have precedent now.
Yep.
So what are we going to apply it to? And that's where I start feeling things.
And I find it's always in the interest of the children.
Yeah.
We're saving the children. We can't have little Timmy looking at boobs. Like, that's what it always starts with that, right?
Totally.
And it's going to be, oh, well, we can't have this, so we'll block out this portion of the internet. It's like, oh, well, this online news article that seems like it's against Canadian culture because we already have Bill C-11 and Bill C-18. And now if we're going to start taking down these other things that we deem as harmful, we're just going to keep taking things down. And when you keep blacking things out and keep censoring, that's where it gets to be really, really, really dangerous. And we get closer and closer to that Black Mirror episode where everybody's got their social credit score. And it's like, Timmy looked at 2 pictures of boobs last night, and we have the facial recognition to prove it. And we're going to post that everywhere for everybody to see and ruin his life. And he can't get a job somewhere now. Like, I see it being so, so bad.
Yeah. I 100% agree. It is interesting that's being talked about. Pierre was asked about it in his speech today, or I'd say speech, his time in front of the homies, in front of media. And they asked him, like, do you support this bill? And he said 2 words. He said, yes, we. So that's what he said.
Yeah.
So it is, we'll see where this ends up going. As you said, it was proposed by the Senate. And we'll see if it ends up making it through. Liberals are opposing it, and but the Conservatives and NDP are supporting it.
I think it's a bad idea. I think it's a really bad idea.
We'll be interested to hear what the listeners think on that one. We're real wild, but
save the boobs.
Oh my gosh, gee willikers. So wild card segment. I wanted to leave this off just because I just want to shout this person out. This person on TikTok. Her name's Seraphina. I came across her initially back over the summertime. She is, I would say, a Taylor Swift cover artist And I definitely put cover artist in quotations because she's not the most talented lyricist, or it's not the lyricist, vocalist, I should say. That can't really sing, but she really has such a sweetheart. She's awesome. And I first saw her. She was a video of her at University of Calgary, performing in front of like students just on campus somewhere. And she was trying her best to belt out Taylor Swift songs, and she was dressed like Taylor Swift. And this girl's trying, right? And it's not necessarily great, but she's on TikTok now, and she like those videos boomed at the time for the reasons you could imagine they were. And she's taken that little bit of fame and she's running with it. And she's on live almost every night singing Taylor Swift songs. And people are giving her, you know, what they give her on TikTok, all these stupid emojis and whatever, which is in fact money. And her whole thing is, I'm going to, all the money I make on TikTok, I'm going to take and invest in singing lessons.
You know what? Like, I love that you brought this to me because, you know, I sing, you know, I play the piano, you know, I play the guitar, and I have perfect pitch. So this is going to be a little bit painful for me probably, but I'm excited. And like, honestly, at least she's doing something. Like those stupid NPC people, like I can't handle it. I brought it up again the other day with friends because I was like, this is driving me nuts. I feel like a boomer talking about it. So at least she's doing something.
Absolutely. And she's trying. And so we'll play a little something for you here. She's on live right now. Let's see what she's doing.
Oh, okay.
I can't see the whole thing. Oh! You guys ready for the note? Every time you're loving me. Oh Lord, save me, my drug is my baby. I've been using for the rest of my life. Using for the rest of my life. Oh,
She's trying, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what? Like, it was like almost good.
She was almost there.
Yeah.
And she just couldn't hit the end. Like, honestly, that's honestly she's honestly in a better spot than she was even, this is what she popped off on.
Capri! All right, let's hear that back. Capri! Don't say I didn't warn you. Capri! Boys only want love if it's torture. Capri! Don't say I didn't warn you. Capri! Boys only want love if it's torture. Capri! Don't say I didn't warn.
So that was like kind of the song that she popped off on, or that was the video she popped off on. So reason why I bring her up is because, again, we just saw her live, saw this TikTok video, and people still rip on her during her lives, which I feel so bad for. And she called out one of the people one day I was watching this live, and she's like, I never said I was good. I just want to be better. I love singing. I just want to be better. And I was like, you know what? You're going to shout out on my podcast because I respect that hustle. I respect you trying and not letting the haters get you down. I'm here for it.
I love that mentality, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
I never said it was good. I'm just trying to be better. I feel like that should be everybody's mantra, honestly.
Yeah.
Stay humble, but stay hungry. Like, yeah, never said it was good. I'm just trying to be better.
Absolutely.
And some of those notes, man, oh, they hurt my soul a little bit. They hurt my musical soul.
I figured they would. I figured it would.
Did she seem so nice?
Dude, she's such a sweetheart. And, you know, as someone who I believe that she did this at University of Calgary. I assume that she's Canadian. I figured just give it some love to my fellow Canadian.
Yeah. All the love her way because she's doing what she's loving. And obviously if she's getting money towards vocal lessons, then they're going to be able to help her because she's got enough there that like she's not tone deaf.
Mm-hmm.
So they can probably work with her and probably help her a lot, honestly.
Yeah.
Just judging by what I heard in the microsecond that we played. So
yeah,
good for her.
And as a vocal, like I have friends who are like actually good singers, and they're very adamant is the fact that you can teach really anyone to be a good singer.
Yeah.
It's not like just a gift thing. If they're willing to train, they can do it.
Yeah, it definitely. It's one of those things. It's like most people have the capacity to be a good singer. There's some people who are like
lost causes,
colorblind, but for music, like you know what I mean?
Just can't do it.
They just my poor wife, God love her, she is one of those people. I'll play the piano and I'll be like, oh my God, that's awful. And she's like, what do you mean? And I was like,
what are you talking about?
I'll play 2 notes and she'll be like, I know that I'm supposed to know that they sound different, but they sound the same to me. And like, yeah, that's it.
There it is.
So some people just don't have the ability to differentiate between the notes. But for the bulk majority of us, we didn't say we were good, but we can be better.
Amen to that. We love to see it. So whatever it is you're doing, whether you be going to a concert,
on your way to the gym,
or doing the dishes, whatever it is you're doing, wherever you are, we love you. We're out. Peace.